So some of the best information on readiness or motivation for change that we're finding is coming from the folks that are involved in motivational interviewing. So two of the dimensions that they focus on are importance, the importance of the change, and confidence, how confident a person is in making the change for themselves. And so when we think about readiness within an organization, on one level we're having to think about it individual by individual. And what we're really wanting to do is listen for to what extent is a person seeing this as an important change, as a change that's worth making, and not at the level of what's important to the organization. So there's some helpful things that we can be thinking about when we're working with people who we've determined are not quite ready. I think the first thing to do is when we think about people that aren't quite ready is to first be really, really comfortable acknowledging how normal it is, that it makes complete sense that any of us who have a new idea presented to them might initially be hesitant. And so it allows us to think about, so what would that process be? What would I want or need if I was being encouraged to consider a new idea? And so one thing I would want is access to information. And I might not want anyone pushing it on me in a hard sell way, but I might want to know it was available to me. So the idea that one thing we can do when we sense that a person's feeling not quite ready for a change is to think about how would I make information available? Low key, facts, no pressure. Would you be interested in seeing a handout on this? Would it be nice to know that you could read an article? There's a website that you could go to if you want to learn more. So kind of low-key, it allows the person to be very much in control of what that learning would look like for them, but it does allow them to learn a little more so they can do their own process of considering whether this is a good idea. So another thing we think about is reflecting concern. And that would mean that we're really listening for what's coming up for them that causes them to be concerned about this, and that we're comfortable acknowledging that concern. So I'm worried that I'm going to be asked to do things that I'm not comfortable doing. I'm understanding that the curriculum requires me to do role plays with the participants, and I hate role plays. I'm concerned that this job may have an impact on staffing. I'm worried that this may lead to cutbacks. I think that there may be an agenda that the leadership team has that they're not stating. So to begin with, we want to think about how do we reassure folks that any concern they have is valid. It's tempting in these moments, and this is one of the things that motivational interviewing really teaches us. It's tempting in that moment to push back and say, oh, no, you shouldn't worry about that. Oh, don't worry about that. And actually what we learn from motivational interviewing is sometimes when we lean in and just say to people, oh, that's silly, rather than hearing them, reflecting back to them that we understand that, oh, I can understand how that might be a concern to you, and really listening for what that concern is, that it's more likely if folks have been heard that they're willing to be open to maybe some other possibility. But that importance of really knowing that you've been heard, that your concern has been listened to. We also think it's important to realize that the concern that this person is bringing to you is probably held by others. And so to realize that in understanding their concern, we may be able to think about how we're messaging the change that's taking place so that we begin to help people understand that actually there is no other agenda. This is the agenda. Or let's talk a little bit about how this is going to impact staffing. Or let's talk about how we're going to ensure that folks have the skills that they need to do this well. So the third one that we talk about is roll with resistance, which is, again, this idea that if folks, if what we hear is this real concern or disinterest, I'm not going to be a part of that change, or that doesn't make any sense to me, or this sounds like the newest thing, and if I can wait it out, this too shall pass. That the idea is instead of coming back hard and saying, oh, no, you're either on board or you're out of here, or something as a hard pushback. The idea would be to say, yeah, I can imagine how this feels like we're going through another change process, and it's probably hard to be confident that this one's going to be different. So instead of taking issue with it, it's just to go with that energy, and then to continue to be listening for what those concerns are. Those all three should be attributed to Miller and Rolnick.